Hello everybody, this is Manu S and welcome to another Eternal Top Decks video series. Today I got something special for you. I finally got my take on Grenadins, which I built and tuned together with German Magic pro Patrick Dickmann. For anyone that doesn't know him, he is a German Magic pro player that has been doing really well on the Pro Tour and Grand Prix circuit over the last couple of years, and recently got into Eternal after I tried to get him into Eternal the first time around the beginning of open beta. He didn't really feel like starting another game back then, but now he finally dug into it and he's liking it a fair share. And yeah, we worked on the deck together, so let me show you what we came up with. Okay, this is the deck list. This is basically what we like at the moment. We don't really see much room for change here anymore. There's a fair share of things that we adjusted and tuned from our first list to this one, and he is playing the list a ton. I played it quite a lot too, and the list just seems really well rounded for the options that are available. The deck has some issues, but none that we felt like there's cards that help further solve those. Okay, so the core of the deck arguably is 4 Combust, 4 Grenadin Drone, 4 Devour, 4 Quarry, 4 Vara's Favor, 4 Assembly Line, 4 Madness, 4 Scraptank, 4 Gearcruncher, the 3 Scrappers, probably also the 2 Spark Hatchers, and I would be inclined to call 1 Combustion Cell core as well, to simply have enough power and make it better to utilize these top-end cards. So basically the early game unit support consists of 10 Grenadin providers. These help make later Gearcrunchers pretty strong, provide sacrifice fodder for Combustion Cell, Devour and Combust if needed, trade with early aggressive units, feed the 2 Bloodrite Callus that we're playing, I'll talk about them some more later, or just more ways to grow Scraptank and draw cards with Stonescar Scrapper. Then we have a bunch of removal. The Combust and Madness package is like the main removal. That's basically 8 removal that can kill any unit, if the condition is right, of course, because for Madness you need Devour or Combust or Combustion Cell or a Scrapper to turn it into a removal, and for Combust you need a unit to sacrifice. Then we have the 2 Torches and the 2 Annihilates to round out the removal package. We just felt like the deck needs more early game removal, more ways to interact with either big units or evasive units, so we wanted more, especially against decks like Argenport that have a lot of flyers, and Torch is just a bit too limited in what it does for a deck like this, because we don't really care about relic weapons, so torching relic weapons is usually not very relevant, and we are not aggressive, so torching players also not very relevant, so it's basically just a 1-cost removal that kills a unit with 3 health or less. And that's why there isn't 4. We rather decided to split this slot with 2 Annihilate, because they kill a lot of the same things. All the flyers in Argenport except Impending Doom die to Torch and Annihilate, but Annihilate gets Impending Doom as well, which is pretty important because that's one of their biggest, if not their biggest threat, because Tavrot is actually more manageable a lot of the time than Impending Doom. And also Annihilate kills some other cards that Torch can't, like Steward of the Past, for example, which can also be really annoying between Dark Return and some other synergies like Spark Catcher and stuff. So yeah, that's the split on those. Then the deck has like its payoff cards for like the early Grenadins, the 2 Callus, 4 Scraptank, which is kind of a payoff card and kind of just a card that works very well on its own, and then the Scrappers and the Gearcrunchers for the late game. The Callus was something that we added like midway during testing basically, because we felt like the deck too often had these draws with like drones and hatchers and assembly lines, but nothing impactful going on. And we also didn't really want more scrappers. We tried 4 scrappers briefly. It just felt kind of too clunky and too situational, drawing multiples and not enough fodder. It was just awkward, and it's also the only good removal target in the deck. Basically, it turns on all these opposing Annihilates and stuff like that, so you can't even really play it on 5 or play it just on its own, because it will basically almost always get killed. And yeah, that's why it's just not as good as it seems on the surface in reality, in the context of the deck, because the opponent just sandbags these removal that don't do anything against all the other things. Then you just play the scrapper and they just finally get to use all the removal they have sitting in their hand. So having 3 is a good number, makes for a nice 6-drop, activated right away. If they kill it, then doesn't matter. Sometimes you get lucky and it lives and then it just runs away with the game. But yeah, it's not that essential that you always want one at the cost of having too many or them too often when they are bad, in our experience. And yeah, the Callus basically is cheaper than, say, more scrappers, which also is, and it's also different. Like, Callus has board impact and provides momentum and board control, while Scrapper basically does the opposite. It reduces your board and gives you more resources, so they are good in very different situations and matchups. And there are some decks that just simply cannot beat the Callus, and some spots where your opponent, no matter what they are playing, cannot beat a Callus of a specific size. And it just provides you with some additional punch and potential win draws. Really liked the 2. I probably wouldn't want more, I also wouldn't want less. 2 just felt like a really good number to occasionally have them when they are great, and also be okay that you sometimes have one when they are a bit awkward. But that's the deal with synergy-based like decks like this sometimes. And there's other minor synergies with Callus like Madness. And yeah, the Scraptanks just stand on their own. You just kind of power them out most of the time as soon as you can. The nicest draw is Grenadin drone into Combustion cell into turn 3 Scraptank, for example. The scrappers I already talked about. Basically a grinding tool, not very reliable as a unit due to the deck mostly planking opposing removal, but great at stabilizing and taking over the late game when there's not a whole lot left on both sides, except for a couple of Grenadins, for example. And then the Gearcruncher is basically the late game of the deck, the power play that just takes over the board and forces the opponent most of the time to have a sweeper or just lose the game. And yeah, the deck even realistically gets to 10 power a fair share of the time, where you can just drop this and shoot something down right away. Or Combustion cell helps with that, which is why I wouldn't be opposed to a second Combustion cell, since it's just really nice with all these top-end cards and decent with Madness and stuff, and just gives you like more things to do. But it's also a situational card, and drawing 2 doesn't do a whole lot for you, and there's also not that much room, which is why we stuck with 1. Then there is 2 more role players, the Dark Returns. They basically provide the deck with more early game against aggressive decks by getting back drones and hatchers, while at the same time, which is their main purpose, providing you with more threat density, especially Gearcrunchers and Scraptanks and sometimes Scrappers, to make sure you really get to grind through the grindier control decks, for example. And you can also sometimes get something powerful back that you madnessed and killed from the opponent. But yeah, the card is situational and can sometimes sit in your hand for a while and not do that much for you, which is why we only ended up at 2. I think we started at 4 in the very beginning and quickly went down. And yeah, that covers all the non-power cards. I mean, Vara's Favor, I don't really need to explain. It's just power for the deck, and also, yeah, an absurdly powerful card. Still one of the best, or like strongest cards in the game. And if your power base lets you run 4 of these, you should usually do so if you can afford to, unless you are like a low power requirement hypercurve aggressive deck basically. And even there it's still decent. And then the power base pretty straightforward, 12 duels, 4 Granite Waystone, fire heavy, influence because the deck is more fire than shadow, and also you need the fire for the Waystones. And yeah, that's the deck for now. The deck has been pretty strong and doing really well for the both of us. It definitely feels like it's at least a really good tier 2 deck, maybe a tier 1 deck, but probably only if you consider, if you assume there's more tier 1 decks than Argenport midrange right now. If so, then this is probably one of them. If not, then I can easily see Argenport just being kind of like a bit ahead of the pack in terms of quality, and putting everything else at really good tier 2 or tier 1.5 or something. Okay, that's the deck list for now. As usual, gonna hop into some games. Servers just reset, so we're gonna start from scratch, but that won't stop us. Everyone else got set back, so it's basically just like playing Masters yesterday. So stay tuned for the first game coming up next.